Hi. So I'm going to do this a little bit of a getaway because my screen recorder wasn't picking up my audio for some reason. It wasn't picking up on the microphone, so I'm actually going to video my computer screen. And the other thing I'm going to go ahead and note is that I don't have internet on this computer. I do on my work computer, but I don't have the mimio file on that computer. So I'm not going to be able to show you my internet portion of it, but I'm going to attach the website where you can look at the tool that I'll be talking about. But it's not really for the lesson, it's just kind of an added bonus, but I'll make a note of that when we do my lesson. So, without further ado, I'm going to do a lesson on stage directions, and here's my computer screen. Alright, stage directions. This is actually a really important lesson in intro drama because it's part of the AKS and it's part of the Common Core. So any drama student that's an intro across the country will have to learn stage directions. It's on every single final exam for intro theater all across the country. So this is actually something really important that they need to learn early on for the curriculum. But also, to be a good theater student, they're really going to need to have a good sense of what stage directions are when they're part of a show, and I tell them where to go on stage. As the director, they're going to know what I'm talking about, they're going to know what the stage terminology is, and it'll get them used to kind of being a part of the professional world of theater. So, here's the stage directions lesson. We'll start off with basic stage vocabulary. So, the stage directions apply to the actor as he or she faces the audience. This is super important to note because if you don't know that they're facing the audience, then you won't really understand where your left and right is or where up and down is. So it's important to note that it's where the audience is facing. Stage right is the actor's right. So this is a special note that you need to make. Stage left is the actor's left. Downstage, these are all the little shorthand versions of the way to notate it on paper. Downstage, nearest to the audience. Upstage is away from the audience. And the reason they have downstage and upstage the way that that is because back in the old days they used to have the stage raked. And when they would have the stage raked, it was a way for the flat audience, because the audience was not on levels like in a movie theater. It was actually just on a flat piece of floor. So when they did that, they were able to see all the way to the very back of the stage what was going on when the stage was raked. So that's why they call it upstage and downstage. And then center stage is obviously pretty straightforward. Everybody knows what center stage would be. Alright, and then there are other ways to notate this. So if you see the R, so if I'm going upstage left or downstage right, you would use the same notation. So you would always want to write if it's up or down first, and then if it's left or right, but then sometimes it's center. So you might be down, and I'm doing this with one hand, I apologize, down, center. So those are just different ways to notate it, and we're actually going to see the layout of the stage, and you're going to see how you can actually notate it on paper. And I'm actually going to circle this right here because the perspective of the actor is actually most important. That was a horrible circle. I'm going to erase that. Okay. You get my point. It is really hard to do this on a mouse with one hand, I'm figuring out. It was a lot easier when I was doing it last night when I wasn't holding the video camera. Okay, so the actor's left and right is the most important because it's not the perspective of the audience. The audience is seeing actually the opposite. It's what the actor is feeling when they're facing the audience on stage. And I'm going to pause the video just so my battery doesn't die, and then I'll start it over again. Okay, I'm back. I just didn't want my batteries to die, and I've actually set up the camera a little bit on a notebook, so I hope it doesn't fall down. That way I can have two hands to make it a little easier on myself. So I would start the lesson, obviously, with getting them to understand the importance of learning this vocabulary as far as curriculum, but getting them to see the importance, just like I already notated to you, about why it's important to learn stage vocabulary if they want to continue in the theater. So we would kind of go through this as a PowerPoint on the big projector, and I don't have a whiteboard, so I would just use the projector, but I would just use my mimio pen and I would make all these little notations. So we'll move on to the next screen. So if you're looking at a actual stage, you can kind of see where all of the stage directions are. So I can highlight down here where the audience is. That way you can see that, and you can see that obviously the actor is going to be facing the audience. So it's really important to notate that the audience is where the actor is going to be facing most of the time. And so all of our stage directions are based off of where the audience is. This is the right wing because that is the actor's right. And this is the left wing because it's the actor's left. One really important thing to learn, and what we're going to kind of do in our next activity, is that there are 9 stage directions. So I can do a little board here to kind of make it a little bit more clear, but you'll start to recognize a very familiar shape. And this is a tic-tac-toe board. So basically, if you divide the stage into 9 sections, you have a nice little tic-tac-toe board of every individual section on stage that a director might want to move you to. Now, looking at these notations that this page told us about, R for stage right, stage left is L, downstage is D, upstage is U, center stage is C. And you can see how I started to make these notations over here. So I started to do these notations right there. So we're going to go to the next page and we're going to start to add in these notations. So let me change my color. Alright, so if I am center stage, it is only one letter and it's only one word. So all I have to write is a big C. And this, when you're doing blocking, when director's telling you where to go, when you're writing it in your script, it just makes it a little bit easier for you to write it. That way you're not having to write out I cross to downstage center. You don't have to write out the whole word. You can just write C. Or for downstage center, you would write D for down and C for center. So it would just be DC. So cross to DC, and you would know exactly where that is. So upstage center with a notation would be a U and a C. We can go over to the right side. So we always start with the first word. So that would be a U, and then an R, and then an R, C, and then a D, R. And then if we go over to this side, it's a U, L, L, C, and D, L. And this would be an obvious time where I would be asking the students and getting them to prompt me, and they would probably figure it out, but I would get them to kind of notate this for me. And as soon as we get a good handle on that, I would go to my next slide. You can see that it's a familiar tic-tac-toe board. I have my right wing and left wing and the audience down here from the recognizable stage from the slide previous to this. Now what I like to use is this website on veryfunenglish.com. I'll include that in my lesson plan that I'll send. That way you can actually see the website. But you create an account for free, and then you go to tools, and they have a random student selector. And what you're able to do is you are able to input all your students' names, and you're able to kind of pull up, and it's just kind of a little lottery, kind of like the slots machine. You just press go, and it slots through all of your students' names for that class, and then it just will randomly pull up a student's name when you decide to stop. That way students don't ever feel like you're picking on them, and they kind of like the noise of the slot machine as it's going, and then they get to choose when to stop the machine the next time. So they kind of get the privilege of who's going to be the next victim to have to answer a question. So basically, using that random student selector, I would be on this tic-tac-toe board, and I would have a little cup, and they would be of index cards, and basically they would just have written upstage or downstage, and it would have the full sentence written out. So if, let's say I pulled up on the random student selector, I pulled up Allison. So then Allison would walk up, she would pull a random stage direction out of that index card. It might be downstage left. So downstage left, she would get her pencil ready, and I would ask her to notate the shorthand for downstage left and to put it in the correct box. So she would probably look, is it down or up? It's down. Is it right or left? It's left. So then the notation would be down, down, left. From there, she would pick who, when to stop the slot machine next, and then the next student that would come up would pick a new card, all the way until all of these spots are filled in. So it would be 9 different students that would go, and eventually all of these squares, oops, I'm not very good at this mouse thing. This would be down, center, down, right, right, center, left, center, up, stage, left. So all of these would get filled in by the students. They would walk up and do that, and then they would use all of the index cards, and everything would be used with the random student selector. Depending on how many students I have in the class, usually I have about 25 to 30. I would maybe do it again. I would maybe erase everything. So maybe I would come in here and erase all of it and go through that same process again just to give a little bit more practice. Our classes are about a good 45 minutes of solid teaching when you take out attendance and packing up and cleaning up and all that. So a good 45 minutes, and this would give me plenty of time to be able to do this slide multiple times if I felt like they needed extra practice. So let me go to the next slide where we start to talk about other stage vocabulary. This vocabulary is just as important as any other vocabulary would be. So all the stage directions are definitely important, but these are kind of the things that you'll hear directors shout out, or maybe a stage manager, or even when I'm doing class on stage and I say, oh, the actor blocks are off stage, or we need to go backstage and get the paintbrushes so we can paint something. It's vocabulary that you use on an everyday basis in the theater. So we're going to kind of go through this. So starting with on stage. Oops. That's not what I wanted. I wanted a highlighter. On stage, the acting area within the set visible to the audience. So anything that the audience can see would be considered on stage. Now there are times when actors are waiting to go on stage and they're standing in the wings, which is another word we're going to talk about down here in a minute. But they're standing at a specific spot in the wings where they are still able to see the audience. And the best rule of thumb is if the audience can see you, then if you can see the audience, then the audience can see you. Always, always, always. If you can see them, they can see you. And so you never want to position yourself backstage or in the wings in a place where you would be able to see the audience for any reason. So, off stage. The parts of the stage not enclosed by the setting. So sometimes it might be, I have built a backdrop for a set, and it's all enclosed in, and all of the set pieces and the acting takes place in front of that house backdrop. Well, what about behind that backdrop? It's still considered on stage, but the audience can't see behind there. So that would actually be considered off stage. And an actor might wait in that area off stage before they go on, even though they technically would be on the stage. They're not visible to the audience. So they'd be able to wait behind there and not be seen by anyone. And then we have backstage. Backstage is the area behind the setting. So behind the setting would be maybe through a closed door or through a bunch of curtains. And usually backstage is the place where you'll find the scene shop, the dressing rooms, the green room, which is the area that the actors wait to come on stage, wait for their cue. So backstage is not in an area even close to where the audience would be able to see them. It's completely out of audience view. The wings, which I've already mentioned before, Wings are actually the offstage area to the left and right of the acting area, and they're usually curtains. So if you see the black curtains on the sides of the stage, the curtains are actually called legs, and I'll write that. The curtains are actually called legs, what the actual curtains are called, but that whole area is called the wings, and that's usually where set pieces live until they're going to come on, so you don't have to take them all the way backstage. You just kind of put them in the wings out of sight of the audience. That way we can just kind of roll them on when we need them. Last but not least would be the house. The auditorium, where the audience sits, also called out front. So you'll hear, okay, go sit out front, or out front is where the lights are going to come up, or that's where the spotlights are. Any of those kind of area, that's why we would say out front. It's kind of a little nickname for it. But the house. You can remember back in the day when they would say on stage, is there a doctor in the house? And that is just where the audience lives, and they watch the performance from there. Now, there are sometimes in very different scenarios, but there are sometimes when the audience is sitting on all four sides of the stage, and that's called theater in the round. And if that's happening, or arena staging, and if that's happening, then you don't really have a house. You just call the house where the actual audience rows are. So it just kind of depends on where you are, but for the most part, those are the main words that we need to learn. Go to the next page. Same with using that same random student selector. I would pick 5 students, and they would come up and they would actually grab these words. So I would say, okay, let's go back and look on this page. On stage, the acting area within the set visible to the audience. And I would say, okay, Allison, where is on stage? She could grab this on stage and place it wherever she thinks the on stage is. And of course, on stage is going to be on here, right in the middle. It doesn't have to be center. It could be over here. It could be over there. But it's anything that's visible to the audience. So I'm just going to put it right here. And then I would use the random student selector again. And I would ask them to look at the next word. So the previous word to that was offstage, the parts of the stage not enclosed by the setting. So offstage. Now, offstage could be back here, maybe just behind a backdrop. Offstage could be over here. Offstage could even be behind a backdrop piece over here. It just kind of depends on what the set calls for. I'm going to put offstage up here. Like I was talking about the house backdrop, I'm just going to pretend like it's going to live up there. So then the next word would be backstage, the area behind the setting. So the backstage area, they would get this and move it around after using the student selector, and it's actually going to be behind these curtains, so behind the closed doors. So you would go through a door here, and that would be behind those closed doors. And then we have the wings. The area behind, or the wings, the backstage area to the left and right of the acting area. So the offstage areas to the left and right of the acting area. So they would get this wings word, and they would move it to the appropriate place. Now, the correct answer would either be either side. So really, it could be on either side, but it's going to be in this area. And you can see it's before you go through the closed doors, and it's out of audience view, so you won't be able to see anything. And then the last word, the house, the auditorium where the audience sits, also called out front. So this person would grab this house, and they would most likely, hopefully, move into this area down here, which is where the audience sits. So that's what we have here. And again, I could reverse all of that, get all the words back up to the top, and then I could use that random student selector again, and they could practice that if I felt like some more students need to practice this. And this is very, very basic. This would be a lesson I would use in the first week of school, really, because this is something they need to learn very early on, and this is usually for people that have never done theater before. So that's our little activity for the other terminology. The final thing we're going to talk about is body positions. There are 5 basic positions: 1/4, full front, profile, 3/4, and full back. So these 5 basic positions are the places that an actor could be standing. So if you're facing the audience, again, I'll highlight the audience down here. Okay, if you're facing the audience, it's the position that the actor's feet are standing. And I don't know if you can see it. It's a little dark because of the footprints. Let me see if I can make it a little bit. Oh, there we go. That looks a lot better. All right, so I have all of the body positions here. So let me get my little arrow. So if the audience is down here, then these are the 5 body positions. So if an actor is 1/4 body position turn, then they could either be facing that angle, which is the angle that those footprints are, or they could be facing 1/4 this way. Full front, the actor is only facing one direction, and it's going to be straight down facing the audience. Profile could either be the direction of these footprints, which is towards stage right, or it could also be in this direction facing stage left, but the actor's body would be completely profile. 3/4, we're starting to face upstage, so you could either be at this angle, or we could be at this angle. But that's the 3/4 position. And then the full back, you are facing all the way upstage, your back is to the audience, and you're facing away from the audience. And one thing to start to learn with this is if you look at it this way, kind of like a little pie graph, we could make a little circle here, or even like a clock. I like to do body positions by clock, and that's getting really complicated. But if we're just looking at the 5 body positions, then you would have either up or down, the profiles, 3/4 to 1/4, and then this 3/4 to 1/4. So when you're combining the two of those things, and a director might say, oh, and you can't see that one, a director might say, I want you to cross to downstage left and be profile. So there's 2 different things you have to think about. You have to think about what the stage direction is, where you're going on the stage, but then you also have to think about what your body position is, what way you're facing. And it just creates a little different vocabulary. It creates a different language between a director and an actor, and it just makes it a lot easier to communicate on stage rather than having to get up on the stage yourself and always show the actor what you want them to do. It just creates a different vocabulary for them. So those are all the body positions. So now we're going to practice that a little bit. By using the random student selector, I would pull up somebody's name, and again, using the index cards that we used for the stage directions earlier, I would have a different set of index cards that would just have the different body positions. It may say profile. Okay, well, which way in profile? So the card would have to say profile right. So then the student would, let me bring this down a little bit, or bring this back. Can't see it all the way, but that's okay. So if it was profile right, this person would come over here, and they would move this picture to the correct body position. So they would see that that's profile right. Well, then another student from the student selector might come up and select 3/4 left. So 3/4 we know is going to be up here, and this would be the left, this would be the right. So we know that we want to go to the left side of the stage at 3/4 position, so that it would end up being there. Maybe another position would be full front. So full front would be actually front facing the audience, which is right where we started from. And then just as a reminder, we have 1/4 right, profile right, 3/4 right, full back, 3/4 left, profile left, 1/4 left, and then back to full front. So those are all the different body positions that you can be on stage. And if you always think about it in this little pie graph, and then you place this little pie graph in each of your 9 sections on the stage, you're able to really kind of map out exactly where you should be for your blocking, where you're supposed to be on stage at what particular line. So we'd go through the student selector, and we would do as much practicing with that as we need to. I could go through the whole class if I needed to. For the final project, we would kind of combine everything together. So what I would do probably was using those same index cards, or actually I probably wouldn't use index cards. I would probably just call out a sentence, maybe an actual sentence that you would use in blocking. So using the random student selector, we'll use Allison's name again. And you can kind of see the footprints continue all the way up to the top, even though you can't really see it. So Allison, Bill crosses upstage center and faces full front. Okay, well which of these footprints are full front? Well, this is a full front position right here, and he crosses upstage center. So I'm going to look at my 9 areas on the stage, and I'm going to move these footprints to upstage center. Then Allison's going to pick when the student selector is going to stop. The next student, Bobby. Okay, Bobby, Alice crosses right center and faces 3/4 left. Okay, so the 3/4 left is this footprint here. So they cross to right center, which is going to be this area here. And of course there might need to be some prompting, there might need to be some context clues, you know, repeat the sentence over and over again, that way they can kind of hear what they are. But eventually I should be able to just say the sentence one time and they should be able to grab these footprints and place them exactly where they should go. So I would go through the student selector and I would make sure that all of these 9 areas are getting filled in, and just like all the other activities, I would actually go through this multiple times. That way all the students would be able to practice this, because that's exactly what a director would say to you. The director would say, okay, Alice, your character, you're going to cross stage right and you're going to stand at profile right. You know, so that way they know exactly where they're going all the time. And the best way to do that, all I'd have to do is just reverse these back to where they were before and start over again. So the students, everybody would get a chance to practice this. And that is my final slide. And really, what I like to do usually for games and activities like this is create some incentives. We're doing the random student selector, so it's not as much as volunteers. But we could split them into teams. I could do a little game with this. I could do a game where we could create some poster board of this exact layout, and I could give them a paragraph of blocking, and whoever could complete the correct notations of the blocking and where the footprints go in the little graph, whoever does that first, whatever team does that first, could get a prize. So there is a way to fill in extra space if I need to. Though just this lesson, without using all of the students, without going through every student selector, is already close to 25 minutes. So it's important to note that I might not have time for a game, but I think a game with teams would be really, really interesting. And obviously for those kinesthetic learners, I would bring them up on the stage and actually let them stand in those body positions and let them stand in those 9 acting areas and maybe do a little physical game, maybe to warm their bodies up at the very end of the class to kind of get their brains working again before they leave my classroom. But for the most part, this is the best way to learn it with the mimio technology. And I'm sorry you didn't get to see the Very Fun English website because it's really cool. I might actually, at the very end of this video, I might go on the other computer and just pull it up and just kind of talk you through how that works a little bit, because it's really, really neat. And I would be able to just minimize my screen. It'd be really easy for me to just minimize my screen and then just pull up. It's not even going to pull up my internet at all. Where'd my mouse go? Can't find it. Oh, there it is. So I could just pull up the internet down here. It's not going to pull it up at all right now because I don't have any internet access, but I could just easily pull up my minimized Very Fun English and then minimize my internet, go back to the mimio, make it full screen again. So it would be really easy to go back and forth in between the internet. And what I like about this mimio tool as well is you can highlight things on the internet, which I did not know until I started working with this. So this is a really neat tool, and I think a mimio will be something that I will be getting for my classroom. But I'll go ahead and stop the video and I will get online and I'll show you that Very Fun English tool. Okay, I'm on veryfunenglish.com, so I would just do a little login and you can log out, make your little account for free, but it's under Tools. And then I would go to Random Student Selector. It's going to pull up Random Student Selector, and I already have an account, and I've already been using this in class, so I have all 3 of my intro classes. So let me just go through 4th period. It pulls up all the kids' names here. So if I needed to edit them for any reason, I could add names to my list, I could edit the names that are there, or I could completely delete a class if I don't need it anymore. There is a way for you to import, you can barely see that, import a roster from online if that's what you have. But I would just press this OK, and then you're ready to go. So for that first activity, I would just press Go, and then press Stop whenever I feel like it. And Amanda would be the one picked out. So she would come up, she would do her thing, and then I would say, okay, Amanda, you get to tell me when to stop. I would press this. She would say, stop. So Shabak would go next. So you go through that Random Student Selector, and you can see up here, remove names once selected. So this means that for one particular activity, it's not going to ever pull up the same student's name more than once. And if I wanted to go through the whole class for one activity, then for the next activity I would have to go back. I would kind of just click through these, just kind of refresh it. I would click on 4th period again, and it would start me over again. So all the names would be back in the input again, as long as, if I used all the names for one activity. But that's the way you use this tool. They also have some really fun stuff on here that I absolutely love that I'll just mention really quick. There's a dartboard selector. This is also a way to, you can input your names from 4th period again. And here they have all of their names, and you can just pick a color, like if you're doing groups. Let's say group 1, I want that to be red. I'm just going to click. So you can kind of, the dart will fall on someone's name. And that way, let me see. So Alexa would be the first one in group 1. I could grab this again. So Kaylee would be also in group 1. So I could do groups that way for my team game if I want to do that at the end of the class. And it's just a fun way to get them involved and, so they can see that you're not picking on them or trying to place them with bad people or, and it kind of adds a little bit of a mystery element to it, and I think the students really enjoy it. But thank you very much for watching. Sorry, it kind of had to be recorded really, really unprofessionally. Didn't like that. But I hope that you enjoyed learning about stage directions, and I hope maybe Very Fun English is something that you could use in the future or talk about in one of your classes. But thank you very much, and that's the end of my presentation.